Hello and welcome to this short presentation on invasive species, how they can affect our environment, our livelihood, and how we can help to prevent their spread. Hello, I'm Sue Davies, and I work for the Columbia Shuswap Invasive Species Society. Today I'm going to talk about what aquatic invasive species are, some invasive species to watch out for, why we should care about invasive species, how you can help, and how to report invasive species. So first of all, what is an aquatic invasive species? Well, it lives in or around the water, not from here, not from BC. It tends to take over or invade new areas, and it creates some sort of negative impact. These species can be shellfish, they can be plants, they can be fish. In fact, they can be any type of species. So what makes something invasive? Well, they have pretty large reproductive capabilities. These are the shells of invasive mussels, and each one of these invasive mussels can have more than 1 million babies each per year, leading to vast population growth. They also spread incredibly quickly and can establish in new areas. This is a fragment of Eurasian Water-milfoil. You can see that it's floating on the surface of the water and it's got roots already. So as soon as it washes up on a shore, it's going to create a new infestation. And some invasive species lack natural predators. So this is a fish that has very sharp spines on its back, on its dorsal fin, and this makes some native predators unable to swallow the silgai. So some invasive species to watch out for. Zebra and quagga mussels, two different species of invasive shellfish. These guys are not yet present in BC. We don't know of any of these mussels in BC, and we'd like to keep it that way. It is worth knowing that there are some native mussels in BC. You can see on this image, the lower 4 individuals there are native mussels. They're quite large. They would fit roughly inside the palm of your hand. And the red box shows the invasive mussels. So the invasive mussels are much smaller, typically about the size of a dime, and they're always clinging to something. So in this image, you can see them clinging to a stick. And here they are actually clinging to one of those native mussels. So the large mussel that the person is holding is the native one, and those smaller stripy guys are the zebra or quagga mussels, the invasive ones. This is Eurasian Water-milfoil. Some of you will be familiar with this. This is a fully submerged plant. It is common in the Shuswap Lake and in some of our smaller lakes, but it is not in all of our lakes. So it's something we want to be familiar with and want to make sure it's not going to be transported to other lakes accidentally. And of course, there are many types of invasive fish. This here is yellow perch, but there are several different types of invasive fish, and it's very important not to be transporting live fish because a lot of the time people don't know exactly what fish they've got, and we don't want to be transporting invasive fish to a new site. So why should we care about invasive species? Well, it would cost us a lot of money. These are invasive mussels. They are attaching themselves to these little pipes. These pipes have been submerged in a mussel-infested waterway for up to 6 months. And you can see the one that's been in the water for 6 months is almost fully clogged shut. Now, we have a lot of pipes in our waters. We have BC Hydro, we have town water supplies, we have sewage, we have irrigation ditches and irrigation pipes. All of those could be clogged by invasive mussels if we get the mussels into our waterways. The estimated cost of clearing those mussels every year would be around $43 million per year. And that's just to unclog the pipework that we have in the waterways. So an environmental effect is these are fish that are happily swimming in a very food-rich environment. All those little particles in the water are food that the fish can eat. Unfortunately, invasive mussels filter out all of that food. So these fish are swimming in what looks like a beautifully clear water, but unfortunately, there's not a lot of food there. So the invasive mussels could essentially just wipe out the food chain, starving those fish at the top of the food chain. Also, invasive mussels tend to cling to boats, not just pipes and those other things, but they tend to cling to the hulls of any boat that's left in the water for more than a few hours even. And essentially, they're going to really reduce the performance of that boat, and it's going to cost lots of money to clean the boats, lots of anti-fouling that needs to go on. and the estimate of that is over $12 million per year just for recreational boaters to clean their boats. Finally, as well, these invasive mussels can actually wash up on the shores in such numbers that the beaches, instead of being sand, which we have at the moment, would end up being shell beaches. And those of you who like to walk along on the sandy beach with your bare feet and the sand between your toes, well, I'm afraid that's not going to happen anymore, because these shells are razor sharp. If we get mussels into our lakes, there will be no more barefoot walking on the beaches. These shells are actually sharp enough even to cut the paws of dogs' feet. So why else should we care? Well, this is milfoil that I spoke about before. Milfoil can have these incredibly long stems. They're very tangly. Nobody likes to swim in these things, but actually people have been known to drown, tangled up in these incredibly dense mats of water weeds. Not just that, they actually can really impact boating as well by tangling around the propellers of boats. And why should we care about invasive fish? Well, this here is the yellow perch I showed you before. Back east in its native range, it is a great little sport fish. People love to catch this fish. It's good sport fishing. Unfortunately, when it's introduced into BC lakes, there are so many of them because nothing eats them, so every baby survives. And because every baby survives, they become extremely numerous. And when they're so numerous, they compete with each other and with all other native fish, and they never get very big. So this one here is about 10 centimeters long. That's as big as it gets, and it's not going to be a sport fish. It's not going to be useful for anything, and it's going to damage the fisheries of our native fish. So how can you help? Well, first of all, to prevent invasive mussels coming into BC, it's very important to inspect all watercraft coming into BC because mussels like to cling to boats. So we want to use those inspection stations to keep invasive mussels out. And in fact, it's mandatory for all boats entering BC to stop at an inspection station. If you notice one of your clients is coming from BC and you chat with them and find that their boat has not been inspected, please have them call the RAP line. This is a 24-hour emergency hotline, and the person on the other end will give really good advice as to exactly what to do if you've come through or your boat has come through into BC without being inspected. On a personal note, when you are working on your dock, if you happen to run your hand along any surface that is underwater, then it would be really good to know if there's any gritty or sandy sandpaper feeling deposits on your dock. You can see from this image that the smallest of these invasive mussels is about the size of a grain of sand, and these mussels cling to any surface. So if you feel a gritty or rough sandpaper-like deposit underwater, please also call that RAP line to let them know that there may be invasive mussels, so that we can respond immediately. If you notice that a client is launching or hauling out their boat and has weeds or mud attached to it, please advise them to clean and drain and dry their watercraft. So that means cleaning off all plants, animals and mud from your boat and equipment, draining the bilge, the bait wells, any buckets, the engine coolant system and any standing water on the boat, and then to make sure that all items are dry before the boat is launched back into a new water body. Also, please advise clients never to release live fish or bait into the water. So to find out more about invasives, we've got a free app that you can use. You can search Report Invasives BC in the App Store, and you get this great little free app that shows images of all the invasive species that are found in BC. And you actually can report directly through that app. So if you've downloaded it, you can do a report directly through that app. That app has actually links to it can be found on our website at columbiashuswapinvasives.org. And if you suspect that you have seen or know of invasive mussels, please report directly to the RAP line. 1877-952-7277 is the emergency hotline for reporting mussels. That is an urgent matter if you see mussels. Or you can just contact your local invasive species group. That would be me, CSIS. And you can do that through our toll-free number there on the screen, through our email at info@columbiashuswapinvasives.org, or on our website. And if you have any questions, you can pose those questions to that email address. So just to recap, always ask your clients if they're non-BC watercraft, was their boat inspected? If it was not inspected, please ask them to call the RAP line. Ask all boaters to clean, drain and dry their boats between water bodies, and never release live fish or bait. And remember, if you suspect invasive mussels, please report them to the RAP line. And if you have other invasive species, you can report them directly to CSIS. Thank you very much for your attention.